First question this week comes in from Chris, and Chris is actually one of my athletes, which is cool. I like to see my athletes tuning in and submitting some questions. So he says, Matchbox team, question, does anyone in the Matchbox have experience with sweat testing to see how much salt or electrolytes you're losing while you're working out? Are you a light, medium, or heavy sweater? Do you feel this testing is helpful for you to keep yourself balanced as possible during a long race or ride? I'm training for Leadville with Adam. Do you think this additional information would be helpful for me to meet my goal of finishing in under 12 hours? Should I get a sweat test or save the money? Adam is my coach, and he knows my details and knows that I've got plenty of time to ramp up the volume for training this summer because he's a teacher and a coach throughout the school year. Looking forward to hearing your response. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no, I like it. I would tell him it probably is worth the money because of all the metabolic testing you can get done. I think this is the quickest, easiest, fastest test that you can get done, and it's the quickest to solve. And I only say that because last year I got my sweat tested, had no idea. If you had asked me before, I'd say, oh yeah, I'm like a normal sweater. I didn't add any extra sodium to my bottles or anything like that. Never noticed any like performance hindrances or anything like that from that. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm a normal sweater, but I found out I'm a pretty high salt sweater. I think like my number was 1200, which I think the standard is like around 750. I don't know. Like I think when you say you're a normal sweater, it's like around 700 or 800, but I was at 1200, which is quite a bit above that. And so then I was like, and I found that out in a matter of 10 minutes. They strap this thing to your arm. It makes you sweat. And then the sweat, it tells you how much salt is in that sweat. And then it tells you how much, like if you're a high salty sweater. And so, and then with that data, now I just add extra salt to my bottles. Not necessarily in the winter because I'm not sweating as much in the winter. But in the summer, I definitely like, if I've got a normal bottle that usually ends up with like about 500 grams or milligrams of sodium, I will usually add another 500 on top of that into each of my bottles. And I just do that through sea salt. Or now I've got like this really good GoodLife electrolyte mix that's basically sodium. Now I put that in there because it adds some extra flavor too. Cool. But it's just 500 extra. Most carb mix, I think for the most part, if you're shooting for about 90 to 100 grams of carbs per bottle, that puts you usually right around 500 or 600 milligrams of sodium. Yeah. So then I add 500 on top of that.
Okay.
Like I said, it's not like I haven't seen any, massive performance gains from that, but it's almost like you're checking all the boxes to make sure you don't end up cracking because you drop the ball on that, like I don't think it's necessarily for performance gains. It's mainly just to make sure you don't die or like blow up at the end of a race.
Well, I mean,
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that you were just getting enough sodium to support you anyways during your exercise so that it's not having that big of an effect. But for people that aren't conscious about how much sodium or electrolytes they're taking in, that can be a pretty big game changer.
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm curious, when you did your sweat testing, did they also measure your sweat rate?
So yeah, that's
volume of sweat loss.
I think that's like an at-home thing that you do where you weigh yourself and you weigh your bottles, and I've never done that. Maybe I should, but it just seems like there's so many numbers, and like with the like taking in the water during the ride and then weighing yourself, it just seems like there's way too many variables, and to me that just doesn't seem like that accurate of a thing to like weigh yourself on the scale to see how much water you've sweat. That just seems kind of crazy to me. Like,
yeah, I've always questioned that. I mean, even just the accuracy of your at-home scale can sometimes be off by a quarter pound or something.
Yeah. Add up all those variables. I don't know if like peeing changes that or not. Like if you're not supposed to pee, like all those
it's going to change it.
Yeah, all those variables just would skew the whole thing. You can just catch your pee
and measure it, and then you can extract that out.
How accurate do you think your test was? Because I've had that same one done, and that was like 10 years ago.
Mm.
I was at a conference in college and they had a little
Mhm.
booth. I guess it was Precision Hydration, had a little booth
Yeah.
set up. I was like, sure, I'll do it. And like the little round thing with the
Mhm.
Velcro strap, and it makes you sweat. Don't
Yep,
you think
exact
the
same.
concentration
it
of,
forces you to sweat.
yeah. So I feel like the concentration of that versus while you're actually working
Oh,
in
is
the
different.
heat could potentially be different. So maybe you're higher than you think, or
But your pores don't, I mean, your pores are consistent, aren't they? Like, isn't that kind of I guess that would be the underlying
and then
belief, is that
if
whether you're
you're
outside or it's electrically generated or whatever, like your pores, it's not going to change. Like your pores are the same in both of those, I guess.
well, if you're already dehydrated, like relatively dehydrated, you're going to be sweating out a higher concentration of sodium. Remember after I did the half marathon and then got on the indoor trainer and I saw my sweat marks on the I sent you that picture because I was like, wow, this is crazy. That's like
Yeah.
straight salt on the ground.
I know what you're talking
So
about. Yeah,
I think it fluctuates a good bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
now
So-
companies like
I mean, maybe
Element,
the 1200 is just a baseline. I don't know.
now these electrolyte companies like Element, their whole marketing thing is not less, more. Like it doesn't matter how much you take in if you aren't going to use it, like you're just going to flush it.
I was gonna ask that. Doesn't seem like there's a bad thing to taking in more. I guess
I mean,
osmolality.
to an extent, you know what I mean?
Yeah, to an extent. Actually,
You can't just jump to
I heard a
taking 4,000
podcast.
megs.
I don't remember where I heard this from, but they were talking about a study where they did like hyper sodium intake right before a ride, and it has something to do with your plasma in your blood. And when you they were saying like 2,000 milligrams, I think, or maybe even more than that. But like it was like basically like it was a lot. It was like a teaspoon of salt or something like that. You like intake all this sodium, it spikes your sodium, and it has something to do with your plasma levels in your blood. That's supposed to be like a big performance enhancer, and that's actually for performance enhancement.
Sure.
Maybe I should experiment with that, but I haven't.
Yeah, or maybe read up on this study a little bit more. I don't know.
Bicarb. You just down salt, mix some baking soda in with it as well. Just making.
At least with the Element packets, you're also getting magnesium and something else.
Yeah, potassium.
Probably
maybe?
Calcium, maybe?
Potassium.
But sodium's the main one. I mean, like in all those mixes, it's like those are like there's so little of that other stuff, and sodium's like the number one ingredient that, to me, I always just think like sodium's the most important electrolyte that you need to focus on.
Your
But
sodium
that might just
ion
be
channels.
my ignorance.
So I'm curious, have you guys ever experimented with the like at-home kits that you can get to?
I've not.
Okay. So that's the only thing that I've ever done is done
The
that. I've never
Gatorade
done
one? You got the Gatorade?
I did the Gatorade one a few times when I was working with Andrew. He wanted me to try those, and then I got some other generic ones another time that I did.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews on the Gatorade ones.
Yeah, so like my recommendation for that would be, because my results kind of fluctuated, but there was like a general range that it seemed to fall within. So like what I was going to say is, if you don't want to spend the $250 or whatever it's going to be to go get lab tested, which, you know, is fine. You can get those like at home strips to at least get some kind of baseline, you know, understanding of, are you sweating a lot of salt or a little bit of salt? But I would do like 10 of them, you know, like do a lot of them, do them for like every day for a week or something like that. That way you can kind of create some kind of range to work within, and then maybe just take the medium of that. But like those strips are going to be more economical. They're, you know, easy to do at home. You have to be careful with how you're handling it. But you know, that's definitely something you can do like in the field too. So you can experiment across, you know, a hot day versus a cool day. I also know that your diet can contribute pretty greatly to how much salt you're actually sweating. So that's like something to, you know, keep in mind too. Maybe you have a couple weeks where you're consuming a lot of sodium in your diet, and that can definitely increase how much salt you're sweating or losing in your sweat. But I think, like, kind of going back to Chris's question, like, is it worth it or save the money? I mean, it's to me, it's even if you're going to get lab tested, like, it's pretty low cost compared to, like, how much money are you spending a year on nutrition? Like, if you're spending $1,000 a year on nutrition and you're not sure if that nutrition is even like curated specifically for your needs, then that's actually probably more costly than if you just went and got lab tested, and then you can actually, specifically make sure that you're hitting all of your needs. So, like, for you, Drew, like, when you were just doing the baseline nutrition mix, it's possible that you were under supplementing with your sodium, and in which case you're not getting the full benefit of that nutrition. So in my mind, like, if you're going to spend that much money on nutrition annually, you should be trying to dial that in as best as possible.
Yep.
Anything else to add, Caitlin?
I think the proper lab test, like, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. And I think the sweat rate is probably the more important piece of that. So,
sure.
You mean like how much sweat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, another question, somewhat related, is in regard to the sauna, because I'm on this sauna kick right now. So when you become sauna adapted, that's like the right phrasing, you sweat faster, right? Like your body responds to the heat quicker. Is that, I'm understanding that correctly?
So that's generally considered one of the adaptations of heat adaptation. Your body's gonna start producing sweat faster. Yeah.
So does that mean more? Does that mean it will also sweat more? I'm assuming, like, if you keep going down that road, if I start sweating quicker, that would naturally, I don't know, my head would think that I'm also sweating more, like more volume of sweat is coming out.
Typically that would be the case, and because of that, you're also going to your sweat is naturally going to be a little bit more diluted, so it's not your salt concentration is going to be lower because your body's trying to maintain some state of homeostasis. So if you're sweating more and it's the same concentration of electrolyte loss, then that means your body's going to deplete its stores of sodium and other electrolytes. So it tries to offset that and balance it out.
So as you get, so basically, let me reiterate, let me like bounce this back to you now.
Yeah.
So when I become more heat adapted, I actually have to increase my sodium intake because my body's sweating more.
But
I feel like that's kind of counterintuitive.
Your sweat's less.
You'd think that like
your sweat's more diluted though.
Yeah, I know, but that means I have to bring in more sodium because I'm sweating more,
right? Not necessarily. That's what I'm saying about your body's like self-regulating its expulsion of sodium or electrolytes. By doing that, like, it's trying to say, like, okay, let's just say you're losing 700 mgs an hour of sodium in your sweat normally. If you increase that sweat volume, now all of a sudden your body could be losing 900 mgs, right? But it doesn't want to do that. It wants to keep it at 700.
So as it becomes more adopted, it'll bring it back down to 700
an hour, right? So if you actually look at the concentration, so if you, let's say, look at it by volume, so per liter, it's actually going to be lower in concentration. So it's going to be 500 mgs per liter.
Because more water's coming out per hour.
Right, exactly.
Or more sweat is coming out per hour.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
this is where
but that's still, so that doesn't mean I need to increase my sodium. If you are heat adapted.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's where there needs to be experimentation and, like,
kind of feel like you should anyway.
Follow up lab testing.
What would be wrong with just doing extra anyways?
Well, I mean, for one, your body can only absorb so much, so it can definitely contribute to gut distress.
Gut distress. There's the red flag.
So, like, if you're trying to consume 120 grams of carbs an hour, and you're
too much
throwing
sodium.
200 or 2000 mgs of sodium an hour on top of that, you
Got
know,
problems.
you could maybe offset it by drinking 2 liters of water, but
Good.
I don't know
But
that
that's
you're going
still
to do
gut.
that. That's the problem is most of the
too.
time people increase their intake of nutrition and electrolytes, but they actually decrease how much fluids they're taking in, because they're trying to like balance this equation of, I need all the nutrition, but I don't want to carry all this extra water weight, you know, whether it's because of the volume, they don't have any capacity to carry it, or the actual weight of it itself, you know. And that's where you get into a huge problem with digestive, you know, issues, is if you don't offset those, because both of those are going to contribute to the osmolality of the solution. So increasing carbs, increasing sodium is going to increase the osmolality, but increasing fluids, so increasing water, will decrease it. So if you want to try and offset it, you can consume more water, but also like you can only consume so much fluids per hour.
Yeah. Caitlin, anything to add?
I was just going to say, with your question about heat adaptation, like that brings up my hesitation with testing once and then people holding on to those results, because there is that likelihood that it'll change.
Totally.
Yeah, that you're going to get more heat adaptive. All right, this might sound like a dumb question, but can you run out of sweat? Like, is that what happens when you're in the sauna? Is that you sweat so much in 20 minutes that your body, like, because it's almost like FTP testing, you know, like not FTP testing, FTP intervals, where you ride at FTP, and that's how you get adapted to FTP, is you ride right at it. In a sauna, if you're just running right at like your max sweat, I would see how you could like adapt. Like, that's how the adaptation happens, is like you don't. The point of the sauna is not to go in and sweat a little bit. You're supposed to go in there and sweat a ton. And I'm assuming that,
I mean, sweating is just the byproduct of the heat exposure. Like the point is not to go in there to sweat. Sweat is just your body's reaction to everything else that's going on.
But the sweating is what. Okay, well, I thought the sweating was a big component of it, because then you're like all of that, you're losing all of that water through the sweat. And I was assuming that that's why your blood gets more and more efficient, is because like it has something to do with pulling out all the water.
But what I'm saying, like, that's what I'm saying is like the sweat is just your body's reaction to it. So
yeah,
like,
no, I
it's
know
just
that.
It's not the point. Yeah, the point is the adaptations that your body makes.
I guess now we're talking about mechanism. What's the mechanism of heat adapt test? Is it the sweating, or is it just getting hot? Or I guess the two can't be disconnected. I mean, both. It's probably both.
I mean, it's all part of like thermoregulation.
So both.
So like the reason you sweat is because when you're moving, as you're sweating, evaporative cooling is an effect that takes place. So
that's the whole reason you sweat, right?
So your skin temperature will decrease as the sweat or the moisture on your skin evaporates. The evaporation is going to take some of the heat from your skin and just like poof, like throw it into the air, right? So that's like one of the reasons we sweat. In compared to like a lot of animals don't sweat, and that's why we can go, we can endure for hours and hours and hours, and a lot of animals can't. So that's just one aspect of thermoregulation, is like your body will sweat. It'll do other things too, like try to slow down or regulate your effort level. It'll I mean, like there's effects on your blood plasma volume and concentration of
so the blood plasma volume. I figured that the reason that happens is because you're sweating so much. Maybe I'm
I mean that definitely that's for sure one component of it. Yeah. But to say that like you're going in there just to sweat, I think that's I don't think that's the right way to think about it.
Okay.
What was your question though? Was can you run out of sweat?
Oh, yeah,
what do you mean by that?
The original question that got me down that tunnel was like, can you run out of sweat? But I mean, I guess that's what dehydration is like you
Yeah, I mean
just
that would
run
be
out of fluids.
excessive dehydration, like
that's when people die.
Fatal dehydration.
Yeah.
I definitely need to do more research on it because, like I said, we sauna pretty regularly. I would say on average 4 days a week. But there are some days, and I haven't been tracking to understand the pattern, but there are some days I'll go in and not sweat until 20 minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't understand.
'Cause it ain't hot enough.
I mean, I'll look over at Blaine and it's like a regular
session. I agree. I've had those same days.
I'm
just trying to sauna flex. That's how you sauna flex. It's just like you get hotter.
I thought maybe it had something to do with where I am in my cycle because thermoregulation is different at different points in that.
I don't think that's what's happening for me.
No.
I've had the same thought though, and I definitely never thought that I was out of sweat. But I've wondered if it's like has
that?
No.
Every time I get out of the sauna, I'm like, man, I ain't got no more. I left it all in there.
Kaylin, I'm curious on those days though. Do you feel like you can stay in there longer, and like will you prolong your session?
It takes me a lot longer to feel hot as well.
Yeah, that's the same. So like there's some days where 20 minutes hits and I'm like ready to get out.
Yeah.
And then there's other days where 20 minutes comes and I'm like, man, I'm just getting warmed up, and I'll go for another 10 minutes. And then like by the end of that, like then I'm starting to like, sweat a lot and like, get really warm.
Does your respiration go up as you get hotter? Like 20 minutes in mine, and I'm like it's harder to breathe because of the heat. I'm assuming it's because of the heat. I have it ventilated, so like I'm hoping it's not because of carbon dioxide poisoning, but I think it's just from the heat. But like 20 minutes comes in, and that's the reason I'm getting out. Like, I mean, obviously I'm hot, but I feel like I could handle the heat. It's just that like it's getting harder to breathe. I can just feel I'm feeling my breaths get shorter, and I don't know, maybe I need to
wear a heart rate strap while you're in there?
No, but I was looking at my watch. My heart rate by the end of it is higher than normal for sure.
Oh, you have at least your watch
just
heart monitor.
Watch, yeah.
Yeah, which that's fine. Yeah, I mean, this is actually something that I've been meaning to spend some more time understanding is like, so and sorry, Chris, we're getting way off.
We're way off the original question. I'll take full blame, but
yeah,
my mind has been so thinking about the sauna since I've built mine. Like, I really want to understand more about it.
Yeah, so I've been curious more on like the mechanism for how heat exposure improves or increases VO2 max, because it's not the same type of aerobic stimulus that you get from exercising. And there's
no way.
There's endless studies that have been done to demonstrate like there's no like increase in lactate levels or anything like that, right? Like, so you're not stressing your system aerobically in that same sense. But
yeah,
like does the does it have more to do with like the blood plasma volume? Like, is that where it's coming from?
I've even just thought like, in what other scenario are you breathing in air that's like 150 or higher temperature? And I'm thinking, like, I've never had air that hot inside my lungs. So like, does that do something to you? Like, I don't know if my brain's ever been that hot before. Like, I'm just sitting in the sauna thinking, like, I've never been this hot before. I mean, you feel that hot when you're riding sometimes.
Yeah.
But the temperature outside's never 150 degrees. It's just that when you add on the work that you're doing, the energy you're burning in your body, it feels like 150. But when you're in the sauna, you're not burning energy. I mean, you're burning a low amount of energy. But like, the reason it feels hot is because of it's literally the temperature. And I've thought, like, does that have something to do with it? I don't know. Maybe that's just crazy talk, but
the reason it feels hot is because of the temperature. Yeah. I think you're getting lost.
I'm lost. Yeah, but like I've felt that hot before when I'm riding in the middle of the heat in the summer in Kentucky, but it's only like not even 100 degrees outside, and I'm sweating just as much. But in the sauna,
you're working.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So there's a difference in the perception versus the actual reality. Perception is the same in both of those, but the mechanism of how I'm feeling that way is different from both. You know what I mean?
Kind of. I will say
we
I'm
just
pretty.
need to do more. We need to do some more. I need to do some more research.
I'm pretty excited. I will be getting my hands on a core body temperature sensor fairly soon, which I'm pretty excited about, to be able to use that for both training and in the sauna.
You getting the one that clips onto your heart rate strap? I've read about and heard about one. I think it's actually called Core, and it just snaps on to your heart rate. You are like whatever heart rate strap you already have, it snaps on, and it's almost like an add-on or whatever. And it's
so that is the one that I'm getting. Which the only thing that
those?
I'm not sure, but
I need to get one.
The only thing that I don't like about it is, so I didn't realize that it's strapped. I thought it was just its own strap. That's cool that I guess that it straps onto your heart rate monitor strap. I hate heart rate monitor straps, like chest straps. So I'm kind of, I guess, like I'm not particularly stoked about that, but it's whatever. It's just, price to pay. I think it comes with its own strap too. That's the way I understood it. So I think maybe you can strap it onto your own, but I think it also hopefully it comes with its own, because I don't even have a heart rate strap right now. But I'm excited to get my hands on that. I just think that this whole like thermoregulation aspect of training and racing is, in my opinion, it's been like kind of underserved performance wise for quite a while. And I feel like that's something, I know like World Tour teams have been experimenting with it a lot. And that's something that I think could be like huge as far as like performance breakthroughs. But we should either get back to Chris's question.
Cheap. It's like $200. It is called Core.
Yeah, the Core 2, right?
Yeah, and it just slides. It's like a little white thing that slides onto your slides on top of your strap, I think.
Yeah.
Dang, $200, man.
Well, what would you recommend? Would you spend $200 and some on that, or $200 and some on a sweat test?
This.
Really?
Yeah, because you can guess your sweat.
I think there's.
I mean, you can.
We just spent 30 minutes answering this guy's question. And
you can experiment a lot, for sure. I mean, you can do a lot of experimentation.
But like, I think that what you're saying, the info from the core temperature could alter your performance big time. Like at a race like Unbound, this could be like a breakthrough type thing.
I know.
Was it on
something
this podcast?
I'm trying to get Dylan to get more into thermoregulation.
So you strap on the core sensor. How is utilizing that data going to play out practically in your training?
What's colder, Caitlin?
Yeah, I think it has two things.
You're gonna ride with an ice vest on,
dude. See, maybe Dylan's looked into it. He's looked into like, how could I pick up an ice vest at Unbound and race with an ice vest?
I don't even think you need an ice vest. I think there's other methods for cooling.
He's got the hydration sleeve in
his back. That helps.
It's
right on him. But eventually that isn't as cold.
But I think that's a good idea whether or not you have a core sensor. My thing is like, how is purchasing the core sensor going to make a difference?
Because otherwise you have no way of measuring your core temperature. Like
other than
you're just going off of sensations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the idea is like, as you're like, before you get the sensations, kind of like heart rate, how heart rate lags power, right? So your power is your output, and then your heart rate is your body's response to that output. This would be kind of the same. Like you're sensing is your response. It is kind of like your heart rate relative to the core temperature is measuring it like real time. So you may be able to pick up on your core temperature elevating before you start to get some of those sensations of it. And just different techniques that can be used to thermoregulate and try and maintain like as close to possible of, homeostasis.
Sorry, I'm not trying to like debunk this sensor, but it's sitting on your skin.
Yeah.
How is it using? So it must be using some kind of algorithm to estimate your
what your core temperature is. Yep. Yeah, that's what it says.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's not buying it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Caitlin, you're the one that turned me on to this. The whole thing. You told us to listen to that. What's that? I forget his first name, but Roach. What's his name?
Oh, Daniel? David Roche.
David Roche. Roche, whatever.
I did.
The guy that broke the
trail. I think I told you guys to listen to it.
No. Caitlin had said that she listened to that, and that wasn't it you, Caitlin?
Oh, with Rich Roll.
Yeah, with Rich Roll. I listened to that episode, and he talked about bicarb. So now I'm trying to do bicarb. He talked about ketones, and I'm like, yep, got that box checked. For recovery.
Nutrition.
Yeah, he talked a lot about that. I'm trying to up my carb intake. I'm trying to bump that up to like 500 per hour, according to what he says. And then, but one of the big things he talked about was core temperature, and he talked about this sensor during the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the whole reason I even got turned on to this was because of you, Caitlin.
I think it was Adam.
It was probably
you
me.
said you listened to the Rich Roll podcast with Roche, and you said that was the reason that you thought Dylan could maybe.
That was me. That was me.
Dang.
I still think Dylan could win Unbound, and it's by implementing a lot of these different things that I think other competitors are overlooking.
Yeah, or like they think that they have it figured out, but they could be
exactly.
They could even be doing more. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm at 100 to 120 grams of carbs," but the way this Roach guy is like thinking about things like this is like, why stop at 120? And he's trying to like push it high as he could literally tolerate, like to the point where he's vomiting often because of over ingestion or whatever.
I don't like it. I don't like. I said we should have a whole podcast on this, but if your body is rejecting something, I don't think that you should keep trying it until it figures it out.
You know what he does to prevent his body from rejecting gels? He sticks the gel all the way at the back of his throat and squeezes it down his throat to where it doesn't even touch his tongue. Because if it touches his tongue, he'll vomit. That's how much he's trying to take in.
Yeah, I mean, that I think has more like palate fatigue built into it, but
maybe.
I think
this guy broke a record last year, though. I'm listening to him. He's got me.
I just think, I mean, this is not information that probably most of our listeners should be implementing. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking like cutting edge, leading edge of the pointiest of pointiest ends of racing. We're like
faster and
where it's like actually their career. This is like make or break for their career, that kind of thing.
And I'm like, my FTP hasn't increased in, I don't know, 10 years. So I'm like, what else can I do?
Yeah, dude, that's not good.
So like my genetic potential, like I feel like, and I hate saying this, but I feel like I've squeezed like pretty much as I can out of it, or I'm darn close. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So now I am going to these like extra things that
so
are
I mean,
crazy.
it's a combination of some of these other aspects of training and the fact that Dylan is still seeing fitness improvements. The combination of those two things and the fact that it's Unbound, like I think Unbound is a really good race for Dylan. And I don't know why we're talking about this all of a sudden. Like we got really off the rails here, but all those things I think are a recipe that could lead to like Dylan actually winning Unbound if he takes it seriously.
Which, he thinks he can.
He says he takes it seriously, but
he's got the mental part of it too.
I know, and that's the part that I think is critical for Unbound. But anyways, let's
sorry. I think that was my fault. All of that was my fault. I'm sorry. I'll take full blame.
Let's do one more question here real quick. So this one comes from Chuck. Chuck says, "Hi Matchbox. I'm Chuck, a 39-year-old amateur roadie. Last year I raced Letap by TDF Istanbul. Not sure what that race is, but sounds cool.
TDF like Tour de France?
I don't know. Tour de France of Istanbul? I'm not sure. And I finished 84th in my age group. This year, I am aiming to make my way into the top 50 in October. The trouble is, I changed my job 6 months ago, and the work is extremely tiring. It is a desk job, but working on too many tasks in a stressful environment with toxic people is giving me fatigue every day. Changing jobs is not an option, at least for 1 year. I usually train around 4 to 6 hours a week. My wife is supporting me on this quest, but even though I have the motivation some days, it's just hard to find the strength. Do you have any training advice for a man working in tough conditions and still trying to achieve? The race has 1,000 meters of elevation, and then he gives his height and weight. I know it sounds like a stupid question, but any advice is appreciated. Love the podcast. Thanks for the great stuff. Love, Chuck. This is not a stupid question. This is like as relevant of a question as it can be.
I have an initial thought.
Let's hear it.
Like, just practicality. With any stressful job and trying to work out is I would try to shift your schedule and your sleep schedule to where you can maybe do your workouts in the morning before you go to work, because that's going to first of all, the likelihood of you completing the workout is going to go up tremendously, because if you just wake up right off the bat, there's less factors that are going to play into you skipping the workout. If you wake up and the first thing you do is work out, then like, what are the odds of you skipping it? Like, the only thing that could prevent that is like you get bad sleep or you wake up feeling bad. Whereas if you try to do your workout after work, like he already kind of alluded to, you could have an extremely stressful day at work and just be smoked from the stress at work. And so then the reasons for you skipping your workout that day increase throughout I've noticed this too, as being a dad too. Like, the longer I wait into the day to ride, the more things that are likely to pop up that might prevent that ride from happening or shorten that ride or whatever. But if I wake up and like first thing get on the bike, way less risk of that workout getting cut short or not happening. So just from a practical standpoint, that was the first thing that popped out to me. And I'm also reading a book called Spark. It's a somewhat older book, but it's about the effect that exercise has on your brain and your brain function. And so I would even also make the argument that working out in the morning would even increase your productivity at work that day, because you did the exercise before you went to work.
Yeah, so one other thing with that. So Chuck says right now he's only training 4 to 6 hours a week, which I don't say that to sound like that's not, I don't mean just 4 to 6 hours like that. That's what you're doing right now, right? So that's your reality. So that means, let's just say you're working out 5 days a week. That means on average, you're doing basically an hour, right? So I think even if you reduce that, like, let's just say, I don't know what time Chuck starts his workday. Maybe Chuck starts, early relative for them, right? Even if you reduce that to say, like, I'm just going to do 30 to 45 minutes before work and just get in what I can. So that way, it's somewhat reasonable to start with. And maybe you can increase that over time as you like get more adapted to waking up early and doing your workouts in the morning. Even if it's just 30 to 45 minutes before work, that's going to be better than doing a workout in your post-work fatigue state and not getting very much, effectiveness out of it. And it's just good for like, establishing like that routine. So that could also be like Caitlin and I have talked about this, like that could mean maybe like 2 or 3 days a week, you just go for a 30-minute run before work instead of like hopping on the bike or hopping on the trainer. Because that could be a little bit easier, lower barrier to entry, and you're going to get more bang for your buck out of a 30-minute run than you will on like a 30-minute trainer session. I would also say, if those midweek sessions before work are going to be shorter, try to make some of those intensity sessions, just get in, do your hard work and get off the bike. I'm thinking like doing this on the trainer, have your trainer set up the night before, or just keep your trainer permanently set up. If you have a trainer and you're going to be able to do some workouts on the trainer, keep that bad boy always set up. Lay out your clothes the night before, lay out your nutrition the night before. Also, don't be afraid to like do an intensity session. I've talked about this before. Like, you can do an intensity session without eating breakfast before, and even really fueling on the bike. Like if it's just going to be a 30 to 45 minute or even an hour interval session, you're going to get by just fine without having anything other than, water and some electrolytes in your bottles. Or maybe you start your nutrition just on the bike and, in the first few minutes, but like, don't worry about waking up early to eat or anything like that. Like just hop on the bike and knock out your workout. It's going to be totally fine. That's going to be
take a swig of ketones in the morning if you are going to do it fasted.
Yeah. Yep. If you're going to do it fasted, that's a great point. Slamming some ketones before is a great option. But yeah, I'm all for it, Drew. I think shift that to doing those workouts in the morning. And that might mean that Monday through Friday, you never work out outside. And that's just your reality. And that's okay. Maybe after work, you just like you and your wife or your family go for a walk around your neighborhood or something like that. Like if you want to get outside and enjoy the weather, just do it in another state instead of working out. Like do it in a, some kind of other, active state or even passive state, just sitting outside and taking in some sunshine, because that's important too. But try and treat your training sessions as like, this is just me going to work for an hour, getting on the bike, getting on the trainer, going for a 30-minute run. And then I would also try and take advantage of your 1 or 2 days over the weekend where you can get a little bit longer sessions in. So if you are truncating those midweek sessions down to, instead of an hour, maybe you're doing 30 to 45 minutes, you can try to make up for that a little bit on your weekend rides, and maybe I'd probably rather see you get like 1 3-hour session in on Saturday than like 2 more 1-hour sessions Saturday and Sunday. So if that means you have to sacrifice 1 day of training and make one of your weekend days a complete rest day, which I think is totally appropriate, then try and make that other session a little bit longer. And that's where you're going to get, a little bit more of that endurance built up.
I also agree with moving your rides to the morning. And if that means that you just have to do 40 minutes of riding in the morning, every morning, and then the longer ride, and that's all you get, then I would say whatever quote unquote wellness practices you can pull in after work, one, it's just going to make you feel better. But I do think it is going to supplement your training as well. So like,
you mean like yoga?
Maybe, yeah, sure. That's checking the box of like.
I'm just messing. I know you're on I'm on a sauna kick and you're on a yoga kick.
I'm on a life kick. I'm on the cold plunge in the morning. This is just a side note to bring up. So if you do, doesn't have to be super cold. I think
keep it cold though.
Mine has been leave it outside and then add ice in the morning, and it's been like 50 degrees. I think it's only getting down.
But you don't
to
have
like...
one of those ones that you plug in.
No,
it's just a little
a tub of water.
Fill it up with an inflatable thing from Amazon. You fill it up with hose water and then throw some ice in it, and it's like 50 degrees. Maybe it gets down to like 47 or something, and that's cold enough. And I'll just do 3 minutes there, and then like a 15 to 20 minute strength immediately after. And if you self warm through strength training, there's been this, I forget the exact study, but increased levels of testosterone naturally.
Whoa. And then chop wood. And then maximize.
But I swear, like after that short little lift, after that cold plunge, like if you could bottle that up and sell it in a pill, like
that's exercise.
The feeling is
right
so
there.
good.
You can bottle up exercise into a pill.
Yeah, I mean it's very similar. Like the endorphin effects from the cold plunge are very similar to the endorphin effect you get from exercise.
You should have a better day. Like work feels better. You feel more productive, like Drew said.
And if you're talking about, if you're trying to shift your routine to doing your workouts first thing in the morning, there's nothing that wakes you up like a cold plunge. I mean, like that thing wakes you up. It's way better than coffee. It's way better than an energy drink. You are going to be on fire after that.
Somebody told me it'll help with ADHD. Now, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but if you listen to the podcast, I guess I probably have it. And somebody had said that cold plunge helps with ADHD.
Maybe.
Because of because of all the, I guess, the endorphins and stuff. It kind of makes sense.
One other thing too, this is again, so we don't know how feasible it is for Chuck here to just reconstruct his schedule to slam workouts in the morning. But it's like, it's feasible for everyone to some extent, right? Like if you start your workday at 5 a.m. and you have to do your workout at 3 a.m., like that just means your whole day has to shift, right? Everything has to shift. So like it can be feasible for everyone, but it may take an adjustment period. And one of the things that they've shown, there's been some studies on creatine and its effects of like reversing or mitigating sleeplessness effects. So like some of the negative effects that you get from lack of sleep
For
can
real?
be offset by creatine supplementation.
No
In terms of
way.
like cognitive performance.
Mostly cognitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
So I don't suggest that long term, and I don't think anyone suggests that long term. But in the short term, like let's say for the
You
first,
mean like supplementing creatine to make up for lack of sleep?
correct.
Yeah, I would.
What did you think I
And then
meant?
say to make
No,
up
I just
for,
meant
but
like
offset some of the.
Well, I mean, I would say, I mean, for most people, I would recommend supplementing creatine at this point, anyways. But
yeah.
what I'm
That's
saying is,
I
like,
would
if you're
say
not
too.
already supplementing with creatine, or if let's say you are, if you increase that dosage, slightly, that can help offset some of the negative effects of sleeplessness. So, what was that, a fly?
Yes.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
If that might be something that could help for the first few weeks or a month while you're reversing your schedule and trying to wake up earlier, go to sleep earlier to be able to get your workouts done. The hardest part of those two is going to be going to sleep earlier. That takes time for your body to naturally start to fall asleep earlier than it currently is. So there's probably going to be a few week period of like lack of sleep where you're sleeping less than 7 hours a night. So it's not ideal. But if you can supplement with some excess creatine, then that's been shown at least to like, it may not help your bike performance because you're going to just be tired physically, but it may help you transition into your workspace where it sounds like it's very demanding mentally. So you want to have that mental sharpness and mental clarity and mental energy. And that's where the creatine supplementation could help with that.
I might have said this on the podcast before too, but the ketones, for
Ketones too.
me,
Yep.
I feel more of a cognitive effect than a physical effect. Different people say different things. A lot of people aren't sharing. A lot of athletes that take it aren't sharing their protocols, and I feel like that's because it works and they want to keep it to themselves. But some people take it during. Some people take it after for recovery. Some people take it in the morning, not even being active, but just for the cognitive benefits. And yeah, I feel sharper when I take them for sure. And I feel like when I do take them during activity, it's not because I feel anything physically, but because I'm a little bit more there cognitively, like the bike handling is better. And I feel like the perceived exertion is lower because I'm not mentally fatigued.
Yeah. You feel like you can get more out of yourself because you can like, harness more energy, that you're not spending on just, mental clarity. Yeah, I feel the same. The sharpest I feel mentally throughout the week ever is when I'm in like a fasted state. So like 12 to 14 hours fasted and I've supplemented with ketones, and I feel like I could slam work all day in that state. It's great. Yeah. So yeah, Chuck, don't first of all, this is not a dumb question at all. This is a very relevant question. I think a lot of our listeners are probably going to resonate with your exact situation. Hopefully some of my athletes are listening too, because this is some of the advice that I've tried to, expend onto them, because I think a lot of these things can help with that scenario. And a few of them have, I've got quite a few athletes that have shifted their workouts to morning workouts, and that, makes a huge difference. And some of these other things of supplementation and just lifestyle habits. So yeah, hopefully, I think this is a question that could be very relevant for a lot of people. And it's just like, again, like going back to what Drew was talking about earlier, with the first part of your question of like shifting it to the, the morning part of your routine. It's just like, it's you taking the bull by the horns. It's you taking control of like, this is my workout. This is important to me. This matters. I actually have something that's a goal that I'm working towards. And in order to achieve that goal, I have to, try to do the best I can to perform at my best. And one way to do that is to just like take control of it, push it in the morning, make sure that it's a priority. And then it feels like a priority. It doesn't feel like an afterthought, something that you're compromising. And then, like Caitlin said too, like that should hopefully set you up energy wise and, mentally to have a better work day. And you might find that it's easier to get through your work day because you've done the hardest part of your day first, which is your workout. That's physically going to be the most demanding part of your day. And you might find that you go to work and it just seems easy.
Is there any other advice we could give him? Like I was thinking also, he may want to do with an athlete like this that's time crunched and trying to do morning workouts. I would think that doing more high intensity would actually be more beneficial for him because first of all, practically, he probably just doesn't have the time to get enough of the moderate intensity like tempo, maybe even threshold. Like he wouldn't have enough time to get a big enough stimulus from tempo. But and like the biggest thing, if you read The Time Crunch Cyclist by Chris Carmichael, which might be outdated if it's written by Chris Carmichael, one of the biggest things he talks about is doing Tabata style drills. And like the way that he explains time crunched training in that book is like you basically just do cycles of Tabata drills. Like you would do a 3-week cycle of Tabata, recover, 3-week cycle of Tabata. That is kind of a short term. Like you can't do that for months and months. He talks about how like you can only do it for a few months because eventually you get to the point where like it just stops. You can't keep adapting to that, like the same thing. But I would maybe even play around with something like where you do a block of high intensity, like Tabata style, and then you do a block of, I don't know, not Tabata, and then you bounce back to Tabata, and you kind of like, you're always kind of tapping into that Tabata style, those Tabata style workouts, because I feel like you're going to get the most bang for your buck with those styles of workouts with that short of a window.
I think you should still periodize it. And when you get to the point in your training where you're doing higher intensity, sure. But say you're back in tempo, I think even if you're still doing 40 minutes, do straight 40 minutes of tempo. And if you do that twice a week, I think that checks the box of intensity, and the rest should be
straight tempo for an hour. That would be enough. Yeah, you're right. just get on and tempo it for the whole thing.
Yeah. Or you do the tempo with sprints while you're transitioning into a threshold build. And
favorite workout.
So I don't think you need to do 4 days of intensity.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't mean like
he meant
more days of intensity. I just meant on the days that you are doing intensity, maybe maybe more often than a normal rider, make those Tabata type workouts.
I don't like the mixed bag of zones throughout the week. I think it should be you dedicate a block to one energy system, you build time in that zone, you move on.
Standard periodization, yeah.
Yeah, I've experimented a fair bit with different forms of Tabatas too. So like traditionally Tabatas are considered to be like 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, something in that nature where you're getting equal to or less recovery, but they're very short stints when you're in the on position. I've experimented with like threshold Tabatas where I'll do like 60 seconds on, 40 seconds off at threshold. And I'll do that for like 45 minutes straight. Cause like you can, right? It's like there's different things you can do like that too, that, you're not doing a traditional, cause it can be hard to like fit in, a straight, let's say 45 minutes of threshold within a 45-minute workout. Like that's just not going to happen. But you could do something like a threshold Tabata style where you could do that for 40 minutes. You're I mean, I know you're effectively only getting 25 minutes out of it. But usually like the idea is like you're hitting higher than what you'd be able to sustain for the duration of it. And the reason Tabatas are effective is your body doesn't totally recover between, like it recovers enough to where you can repeat the effort again, but your heart rate's going to stay elevated, your lactate levels are going to stay elevated. So like it's not a full recovery, and it's kind of like if it's effectively like you're extending that 60 seconds on, 40 seconds off, that 60 seconds on, like you're extending that out throughout the entire session of the, or the entire interval of the Tabatas, without actually like having to maintain that hard effort for 30 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever it is. I'm a big fan. I'm a really big fan actually of Tabatas. I love doing them in my own training, and I love mixing those in. They're very challenging though, and that's where like I've done some of these like threshold Tabatas because they're not as physically demanding. Like you can do it for hours if you really wanted to. Whereas like true Tabatas where like you're really hitting maximal effort for 30 seconds and then recovering for 30 seconds, like they're challenging. Like any athlete, like any high level athlete, doesn't matter. Any athlete will say like those are some of the hardest sessions. So like to me to do that for months on end is like problematic.
Yeah,
like
true.
I think you're trying to pull too much out of yourself at that point. But you could do like, instead of going max, that's what I'm saying, like you go sub max. And if you do sub max, you're still getting most of the benefits without a lot of the negative effects physically and mentally. Like they're mentally demanding.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I would also say I kind of, with the time crunch like this, I would lean towards doing all of your intensity sessions during the week. Like those are already hard days for you anyways. Like might as well make those hard days hard. And when I say hard, because they're stressful, it sounds like, the work is very demanding. So especially if you can shift these before work and you're just doing 30 to 60 minutes on the trainer or something like that, or running, go out and do some running intervals too. I would say trying to do all of your intervals during the week, and then that way you can reserve that one weekend ride that's hopefully longer than an hour is for just straight aerobic conditioning.
And if you do your workouts in the morning, like we're only talking 2 or 3 days a week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If Mondays and Fridays are recovery days, that it's only 3 days a week that you're potentially waking up extra early to do that workout, which I feel makes it a little more, at least it makes it sound a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, I would probably recommend, if you're going to try and adjust your schedule to make it where like the morning workouts become routine,
just do it every day.
I would think even if you're not doing a training session, like maybe you wake up early and you do something else, like you do some chores around the house, or you try and maybe you go into the office early that day or whatever, so you can get home earlier or something. Like I think it's hard, and because I've worked with a lot of shift workers that have that oscillating schedule, and it's really hard to get your body to actually adjust if you're not doing it consistently. I'm not saying you have to get up at 4 a.m. on the weekends, but maybe you do, and then you can get a 5-hour ride instead of a 3-hour ride. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know if this is encouraging or just advice, but whether or not you're starting from 12 hours or 4 hours and making the most efficient use or effective use of your time, at some point something's going to have to change, because you're going to need to give your body the next stimulus. Drew was just talking about like he feels like he's almost tapped out with what he's doing, so he's got to try and do something new. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, if I would say periodization is almost more important the less training you're doing, because your body is going to adapt to that training very quickly. If you're only training 3 or 4 hours a week, your body's going to adapt to whatever you're doing within a pretty quick, reasonable time. So I think periodization, no matter what level you're at, is critical. But especially if you're at that, and it's just good to mix it up. It just makes it mentally, easier to get through, because you're not just hammering out the same exact intervals all the time. All right, cool. Well, I'd say we wrap it up there.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next week.
See ya.